Hey, what's up everyone? Fox Hunter N313 here from Dorks Like Us, looking like a mess out in front of the projector screen, doing this straight up, no video editing. It's been a really busy weekend, and I just haven't had the time to do it the traditional way. But I'm here to talk about the Switch, and I know I said I wasn't going to do any more Nintendo videos. I'm sure most of you really believe that. So I'm definitely eating my words, I admit that. But I wanted to talk about the Switch because I was right. I said back months ago, before these, hybrid rumors had really caught on, that I thought it was going to be a portable console, a merging of the two. I didn't say hybrid. That wasn't the word that came to mind. But that's what I thought they were going to do, and that's what they did. So it was pretty cool being right about that. Now, I don't want to discuss the system as much as I do sort of the reception to it. And for the most part, it's been really positive from what I've seen. But of course, you got your negative Nellies out there. And I want to address some of the criticisms people are leveling at it, some of the assumptions people are making, and some of this different stuff. So to start off with, I know a lot of Nintendo fans wanted a straight up traditional home console that was really powerful. And I've talked about this in the past. And I asked the question once more. What purpose would it have for existing? Look, I know Nintendo has done traditional home consoles in the past. Heck, they pretty much established what a traditional home console is, for the most part. So I get that. Here's the thing though, you've got to look back at history. People don't like looking at history for some reason, but it's important in this case. If you go back to the N64, that's when Nintendo's dominance really started slipping up. I mean, you could say it started with the Super Nintendo versus Genesis, but the N64 is when it really hit the skids. It was just downhill from there. The N64 was arguably the more traditional home console out of the other two, or out of the three. You know, the 64, the Saturn, and the PlayStation. It was the more traditional because it still used cartridges. And it was actually more powerful than the PlayStation. Now, the reason the PlayStation edged out when it came to third-party support and all this other stuff, well, A, because Nintendo put in these stupid publishing limits, but B, the CD. The CD had more storage space. But the N64 was a more traditional console than the other two, but it underperformed compared to the PlayStation. The PlayStation had already started to grab that market share. Excuse me. Then you move forward to the GameCube, and the GameCube was definitely a traditional home console compared again to what was out at the time, because everyone at that point was already all disc based. So for that generation, it was traditional. Didn't perform that well. There was a drop of about 10 million in sales compared to the N64. And the N64 had about a 10 million drop compared to the Super Nintendo. And the Super Nintendo had about a 10 million drop compared to the NES. See where this is going? Now we move forward to the Wii. The Wii was a fluke. The only way they were going to capture that success again is to either do what they're doing now or do something extra gimmicky, like Wii level gimmicky, to try and win back the casuals, which I just don't, that's not going to happen. But that was a fluke. But then if you skip that one and you go to the Wii U, it's sold what, 10 million right now? So it's like a 10 million drop from the GameCube. So you had that anomaly with the Wii, but when you take that away, back on the decline. And people say, well, the 3DS is the least sold handheld out of all of Nintendo's handhelds so far. That's true. However, the 3DS is at around 50 million units, so that means it's sold more than the Super Nintendo, it's sold more than the N64, it's sold more than the GameCube, and it's sold more than the Wii U. 4 out of 6 of Nintendo's home consoles. That's a really interesting statistic, isn't it? I don't think most people know that because, again, they don't like looking at sales. People confuse what they wanted from Nintendo with what's best for Nintendo. And that's a mistake. They don't look at the numbers. They go about how they feel or what they personally want or what they personally think is best. I don't look at things that way. I look at cold hard facts, numbers. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. So Nintendo had lost that market share, the traditional home console market. That's why they've been experimenting a lot with the past couple of consoles, because they know they can't get that spot back. And they know that their portable line is more successful, so merging the two is an obvious way to go, and that's what they did. It makes perfect sense. Again, looking at the sales. And, you know, if you want a traditional home console, again, just, buy one of the other two. I know you want your Nintendo first party support, and you want your third party games, and you want a console that's really powerful and really traditional. Well, you're not going to get that ever again. The only thing you could hope for is for Nintendo to go third party. Then you could just buy one of the other two systems and buy their games on that, and then you have your third party games as well. Not what I'm advocating for. Don't misunderstand. I'm just saying you're better off going that route, which is a lot of wishful thinking. But it would be more likely to happen at this point than Nintendo trying to do an Xbox One or PlayStation 4 type console. It's just time to get past that. And really, I just chuckle, literally chuckle, when I hear these console gamers talking about power like their system is actually the most powerful platform out there. PC, consoles. PC, consoles. This is coming from someone that despises the master race. But the PC is always going to be 10 steps ahead of the consoles in terms of power. If you want the powerhouse, go set you up a good PC rig with the latest graphics cards and all that good stuff. Then you're set. Then you got the most powerful system on the market. But stop bringing that into the console thing, because it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. The amount of people that care about graphics in the console market in terms of console users is way over exaggerated. It might seem like they're in the majority when you go on the internet, but how many people have a PlayStation 4? Or let's go back a generation. How many people had a PlayStation 3? 80 million people. How many people had a 360? Around 80 million people. Again, 3DS, 50 million. The majority of people aren't on the internet commenting about video games. They're just buying and playing them. They're not going on Digital Foundry and looking at comparisons. They're just buying the games on whatever system they have. And then that's another thing. And we'll get into this third-party support. People assume that because the system is weaker, and it'll be even weaker when the Scorpion hits and the Neo hits, that the third-party support that the NX is supposedly going to get, or the Switch, will dry up completely. Well, that's a possibility. Now, I don't think that the third-party support or lack thereof is contingent upon the horsepower alone. Architecture plays a part in it, but more importantly is sales. If you go back to the beginning of the PlayStation 3 generation, in those first 3 to 4 years, most multi-platform games ran noticeably worse on the PlayStation 3. Now, the extent of how bad they ran was, very depending on the game. Some it was very minor, some it was really noticeable, like Bayonetta. And the PlayStation 3's architecture was really difficult to work with. Really difficult. You still hear people to this day, even first-party developers, talk about how difficult it was to optimize games for the system. But with the third party specifically, even though it was difficult to work with, they still made games for the system. Why? Because people still bought the games. Now you look at the Wii U. With the Wii U, it had difficult architecture to work with. Now people talk about the power. Here's the thing though. For that first year and a half, how long it was till the PS4 and Xbox One came out, I guess it was maybe a half year or something like that. The Wii U was as powerful, if not more powerful than the other two systems. Excuse me, indigestion. But it was at least as powerful as the other two systems. We know that much. So in theory, it should have gotten all the same games if all it was about was power. In terms of the architecture, developers wouldn't mind, because they've done it before, they wouldn't mind coding for a more difficult system if they were going to make money off of it. But that's the thing. Those games didn't sell. What third-party games came out? I know most of them were ports. Most of them didn't sell. Not as much as they needed to. I'm going to hear people in the comments section, well, I bought Assassin's Creed 3. Well, I bought Mass Effect 3 and this and that. Well, you did and I did, but most people didn't. Not enough. They have to get a couple of million in sales or so for them to consider continuing support. And that didn't happen. And even when the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One came along, developers wouldn't have minded coding the Wii U version, even though they would have had to scale it down, if the games were performing to a certain degree in the sales department. Because most of the games in the first couple of years of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One's life cycle were cross-generation multi-platform games, meaning they were on last-generation systems. So again, it all harkens back to the sales. That's the most important thing. Having easier architecture to work with and having a more powerful system is good too, but the main factor is always going to be the sales. And that's going to be the case for the Switch. They won't mind scaling the game down for the Switch, even after the Neo and PS, or the Neo and the, it's Pro, PS4 Pro, and the Xbox One Scorpion come along. They won't mind scaling it down as long as the games are performing well enough in terms of the sales. So if you want that third-party support to continue beyond the first year, you're going to have to buy those ports. Don't be complaining that they're running inferior to the other versions. And don't give that excuse, well, Skyrim really isn't my kind of game. I'm not really into that genre of game. You do. I've already seen signs of that. That's why you can't have nice things. It's because of that. So I don't want to hear any complaining from Nintendo fans, and they're making excuses or blaming Nintendo for the lack of third-party support after the first year. Because if you don't go out and support the games, it's on you. It's on you. Now, if the game is like broken or unplayable on this Switch, then yeah, don't buy it. But you can read hundreds of reviews for a game and know what you're getting into on a technical level before you buy it. So there's no reason you would have to buy a broken, unplayable game. But if the difference is something like a frame rate drop here or there, and not even a huge frame rate drop, I'm talking like a 5 frame per second drop, or slightly longer loading times, which that shouldn't be an issue for the Switch. With something like that, but something that's minuscule, no, that's not enough reason not to buy it. Not that I think that most Nintendo fans go on Digital Foundry anyway and look at all these comparisons like they actually care. Most of them don't. But for those that supposedly do, you're just going to have to suck it up. Now I want to address something else. And that's people talking about the portable aspect of it and saying that no one's going to use it, or they don't want to use it, or they're not going to use it, so therefore it's a bad feature. And that's essentially what they're saying. I don't like it, so therefore it sucks. That's pretty much, that's summing up the internet right there in a sentence. I don't like it, so therefore it sucks objectively. Now let's get into that. So you see a lot of people say that, oh, I don't take my portables on the go, or I just don't play portables anymore in general. I hear that a lot. Okay, that's anecdotal evidence. I, for one, happen to take my Vita on the go. When I had a 3DS, I took it out when I went outside the house. Whether that be on a road trip or whether that be, just going to the grocery store. I know for a fact Ace Trainer Becky takes her 3DS out on the go sometimes. I know for a fact that Gym Leader Ryan takes his 3DS out on the go when he's out and about. Anecdotal evidence again, but it's no less valid than what other people are saying. Oh, I went on an airplane trip and I didn't see anyone playing a 3DS. Really? Good for you. You were on one airplane trip in one class of the airplane when there's thousands of airplanes across the country and you didn't see any 3DSs on that one flight. Wow, you got me beat on that one. Really? Well, I think this stems from two things. One is PlayStation and Xbox fanboys that are worried that Sony and Microsoft are going to follow suit, because I believe they will. It's it's going to be hard for them to do another traditional console. There's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to look at the Switch, and it's going to sell well. I think it's going to do extremely well. I mean, Nintendo could screw it up potentially. I just don't see how you do it. But I think it's going to do really well, and people are going to look at that, and they're going to say that this is what I want in the future. And the PlayStation and Xbox fanboys don't want that, at least the ones that are vocal on the internet, because they know they're going to lose out on a lot of horsepower if Sony and Microsoft go that way. That's one side of it. The other side is going back to the Nintendo fanboys that want a traditional home console, and they're just, they're butthurt over it. They're butthurt over what they got. But, if you compare, people have been making the comparison of the Switch to tablets, because it is a lot bigger than like the Vita or the 3DS. It's a little bit less portable in that regard. I will admit that. But the thing is you compare it to other tablets, and a lot of people don't take their tablets on the go. They do when they're on like plane flights or road trips or something like that, if they're not having to drive. But a lot of them just use them at home. They sit on their couch and use them. When someone else is watching TV or something like that. Tablets sell millions and millions, across all the different companies that make them. You got your Chinese companies that are making them for $50 or $60, and everyone has a tablet. I have a tablet, everyone has a tablet. So it's no different than that. And with what this thing's got going on with the multiplayer, all the social functions and everything, it's something that people will take out on the go, I believe. Not older adults, it's going to be millennials, college students, people like that, that are out and about more often than not. And also in Japan, portables are way more successful than consoles. So with this, they're able to market to pretty much everyone simultaneously. Which is a good thing. It's really expanding the market. But yeah, it makes me laugh when I see people, I don't see anyone using a 3DS, or I don't take my 3DS out on the go, so therefore no one's doing it, or no one's going to use it with the Switch. People, come on. That's reaching. That's really reaching. On sort of a last note, I guess, unless I think of something else, I want to talk about the power. Because we don't know how powerful it is compared to the other two systems. Not that I really care that much, but I feel this is worth bringing up anyway. A lot of people are looking at the new Mario game that's shown in that trailer, and based off the little bit of footage that we've seen, it doesn't look a great deal better graphically than, say, 3D World. And people are looking at that and they're saying, maybe it's just a little bit more powerful than the Wii U. And that very well could be the case. However, you really can't judge the power of the system based off the animated games. Those games have really hit their plateau in terms of what you're going to see from them visually. They're about as good looking as they're going to get. And they really hit their plateau with the Wii U, and from here on out, you'll see improvements. The lighting will definitely be something that's improved. And I think you can kind of see that in the trailer for the Mario game. And they'll make the models a little bit shinier. And, they could change the animation style, too. That's always something they could do that would make it look different. But in terms of it actually looking objectively better graphically, whether that be, the textures looking more realistic or something like that, that's not going to happen. People have this idea that, they did that, somebody did that tech demo or something where they had a Mario game that they ran on the Unreal Engine. That's just not going to be the case. And they're not going to go for a realistic look with these games. Remember Sonic 06? Sonic 06 tried to blend the animated with the realistic. Not a good idea. But Nintendo's not going to do that. They're going to stick with the full animation thing that they're going for, and really it's hit its plateau. And so you really can't judge the power of the system based off of that. And that's also a game that could be very well very early in development as well. Because if I remember right, Mario 3D World looked a lot better when it actually came out than when they showed that first trailer. So, I mean, there's that too. Again, I think it's his plateau, but there might be more improvements they can make to the graphics when the final product hits. So you really can't go off that. And with Skyrim, it's a last generation game. It is the remastered version, or at least I would assume it would be. But it is a last generation game that was made for last gen systems. Even remastering it, it's not going to look as good as a game that's made from the ground up on current gen platforms. So you're going to have to wait until next year when you get more realistic looking games to be able to judge kind of where the Switch is at power wise. And even then, there's always that chance that third party developers won't use all the power that's available to them with the Switch for the games that they do bring to the system. So there's always that to look at as well. You might be waiting until you see a new Metroid game, which kind of leans more toward the realistic side in the visual department, before you get an idea of where the system is at power-wise. Again, it very well could be just a little bit more powerful than the Wii U. I'm not trying to debunk that. I'm just saying you don't judge it on the trailer. So it's a wait and see thing. Now, other things they showed in the trailer, they showed what looks like a port of Mario Kart 8 and what looks like a port of Splatoon. They could be sequels. Again, it's that whole visual thing, the animation style, and the whole plateau thing again. So they very well could be sequels. I'm leaning toward them being ports, though, because I think it will take them a while to develop new iterations. But with Mario Kart, you don't even necessarily need to make a new iteration in the series, because I think most people tend to agree that Mario Kart 8 kind of had the best gameplay out of all the Mario Kart games up to that point. And the graphics, again, I don't think there's much you can do to improve them. And you buy a new Mario Kart game to play new tracks. So if you can just add a bunch of new tracks as well as reworking some old ones for the port, that's really all you need. I mean, we only ever get one Mario Kart game per generation anyway. I would rather just have that and have them support the game with DLC as opposed to getting two Mario Kart games that aren't terribly different from one another. With Splatoon, I think even if this is a port, I think you will get a new one. I would really hope that they would do a sequel and improve upon the single-player campaign and really flesh that out more, because it was kind of lackluster with the original. Well, I'm glad they're bringing the original over, because the game has great online. I think it's going to be difficult playing it now, which is standard controls versus the gyroscope. Because I don't think they're going to include the gyroscope. They're going to try to keep this thing as cost-effective as they can. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Maybe when you play it, in the portable mode, maybe you have a gyroscope in that screen, which is a possibility. But that would give those players the distinct advantage over people who are just playing it on their TV with a standard controller. Excuse me. I had some pizza earlier. It's... but yeah, I'm glad it is getting ported, though. It's nothing you can't adjust to. It's just it's going to be difficult going from what we had on the Wii U for those that played it to sort of more standard layout. As for me, I've talked about the Switch or the NX. When it was the NX, I talked about it, and I said that I don't think I was going to get one, and whether I will or not will depend on Nintendo. Of course, we know they're porting Mario Kart. We know they're porting Splatoon, or at least it seems that's the case. Again, might be sequels. But it's probably safe to assume Smash Brothers will also get ported. There are two ports in particular that I'm hoping for. Xenoblade Chronicles X, Tokyo Mirage Sessions. I want these two games ported, and I want the censorship done away with. If they can do that, if they announce that, I'm in. I'll buy one brand new. I'll buy the most expensive bundle that they have. I'll buy every stinking peripheral they come out with for the system. Because that's one of my big issues with Nintendo right now. It seems like maybe they're trying to market more towards young adults and, adults in general. An older audience, which is great. But they kind of did that last generation with the Wii U. They kind of went back and forth on who they were marketing it to. They started out, we're going to get the casuals again. And we're also going to go for the hardcore gamers. And then they did Bayonetta 2. And Bayonetta 2 did sell well for what it was, but it didn't increase the sales of the system any. And they looked at that like, well, we're done marketing to the hardcore gamers. Let's go back to marketing toward the kids. So it was back to censoring crap and doing bull crap like that. So, I mean, it seems like right now they're doing it right, but, they can always change their mind and go in a different direction. So it's always something to be weary of. Now, if they don't port Tokyo Mirage Sessions and Xenoblade Chronicles X, then the only other thing that would win me over, aside from like a first generation Pokemon remake, which would be huge, would be Marvelous, which is one of the third party games that is supposedly pledged support for the Switch. If they bring Senran Kagura over to the NX or the Switch, it's going to be hard getting used to that. If they bring it over to the Switch, bring that series to the Switch, and Nintendo doesn't try to censor it in any way, I would buy one for that. Don't know if I would buy it new necessarily, but I would buy one. Well, they wouldn't censor third parties. Well, they did with Mortal Kombat back on the Super Nintendo. Again, don't put anything past them. Don't have this blind loyalty and faith that they're just going to do everything right this generation because they did so poorly in the last generation. I mean, that is a good indicator that they'll do better, but there's no guarantees. They're still going to make mistakes, and they need to be called out on it when they do, because they're not going to improve. But aside from that, another big thing is going to be the online features for a lot of people, because they really kind of skunked it up with the online last generation. They couldn't even nail something as simple as on-screen notifications. So, that's going to be a big thing as well. Is it going to be free? And are you going to pack the features this time? On-screen notifications, instant messaging, cross-game chat, and achievement support. Now that last one's a big one for me, achievement support, because I really like trophies. And that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but at the same time, when freaking smartphone games can have achievements, it looks pretty bad when a full-fledged console can't do the same. It's not a matter of whether or not the hardcore fans want it or not. It's more of an issue of trying to market outside the box again. If they really want to attract gamers from other consoles, just having third-party games isn't going to cut it. People think that just having Skyrim, like, oh, Xbox and PlayStation gamers are going to buy it because they're going to be able to play it on the go. That's not necessarily the case. Some will. I don't know that it's going to win over necessarily a lot of people just based off that alone, because most people are going to look at it and they're going to say, well, I already have the system to play this game on. And I think, like Skyrim, for instance, I think that's coming out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One this year. So people are going to have a full year where they can play it on another system before it hits the Switch. So, and you could even have third-party games that come out at the exact same time, but again, it's going to be that issue of, I already have the system to play it on. Again, it will win over some people with the portable aspect, but if they're going to really try to attract other gamers from other systems, the online stuff's going to be a big part of it. And something that would really go a long way is if they could get time-exclusive DLC for titles like Call of Duty. I don't know why having time-exclusive DLC really matters to anyone, but apparently it does because Microsoft did it last generation with Call of Duty, and apparently it was successful for them, to where Sony looked at that and did the same thing this generation. So apparently it does work. So if Nintendo could do something like that, that would be big. And not just for Call of Duty, but that's the big one, but if you could do it for other titles as well, that would win over some folks right there from the other two systems. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not counting Nintendo out on all these things. I'm cautiously optimistic that they've learned their lesson from a lot of the mistakes they made in the last generation. In terms of the concept of the console and the direction that they've gone, there's no problem with that whatsoever. They did exactly what they should have done and what I said they should have done, and what the sales and what their history says that they should have done. They did it. They absolutely did the right thing by merging the portable and console sides of their industry together. Because this is going to be good, even if the third-party support completely vanishes. With Nintendo, with all Nintendo's developers now just focusing on one system, that's going to cut down on the software droughts drastically. That's not to say they still won't be there, but they shouldn't be as bad as they were last generation, because you had these periods where Nintendo would just focus on the 3DS and not support the Wii U or vice versa. But usually the 3DS got the lion's share of the support, and the Wii U got left out in the cold. So that's going to cut down on that. You'll see a lot of returning IPs. Metroid's going to happen. They're going to pull all the stops in terms of their first-party support. So you've got that to look forward to. We'll see what happens with the third parties. Again, that's going to come down a lot to the gamers and how they support these games. So get out there and buy them. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on the Switch. I'm very interested in it. I'm very intrigued by it. And I'm happy to see the direction Nintendo's taking. I'm hoping that other companies follow suit and do something, or do the exact same thing. I mean, there's ways you can improve on it, I'm sure. But to me, this is the future. Being able to have these two things in one. There's no reason why we should have to have two different systems anymore with how far technology has progressed. So I'm glad to see Nintendo took the first step. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to us if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more content from dorks like us. This is Foxhounder N313 signing off. God bless.